Donald Trump's unconventional relationship with the press. The president-elect telling the New York Times that he hopes they can, quote, all get along. But Trump's senior advisor has a different message for the media.
I think many in the press, Sean, are still in campaign mode. They're scratching their heads, figuring out how to stop this guy from becoming president, or from forming a cabinet in his likeness, or from actually doing things, a flurry of activity in the first 100 days, which may in fact undo some of the legacy of their favorite president, President Obama. And they need to get over that.
So what type of relationship will the Trump White House have with the national media? Here now is Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary for George W. Bush. We're very happy to have you here on this topic because you know it so well. What do you think of the way that he has treated the press so far? I mean, he's been challenging, he's been oppositional, he's been hostile at times. Will that keep them honest, or does it make an enemy?
Well, it probably does neither. They are, to a large degree, his enemies, and I hate to put it that way. But, you know, face facts. The press swooned over President Obama, and they gave him an extended honeymoon, not only during the course of his campaign in 2008 and in 2012, but throughout his tenure, most of his tenure in office. Donald Trump has not and will never get a honeymoon from the press corps. So the press corps is highly riled up by the fact that Donald Trump and all that he represents has been elected, and they will never cut him a break.
Yeah. So the messenger, like yourself, makes a really big difference. And what do you think of the people that have been floated so far? I mean, if he picks somebody like Laura Ingraham, who I have a ton of respect for, but she really challenges them and goes after them, it would be a very unconventional choice. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have two schools of thought on this. One, if he goes with Laura Ingraham, a very outspoken, articulate, powerful, effective, conservative columnist, Laura will be a daily bashing session with the press corps. I mean, it's going to be must-see TV.
Yeah.
And she would represent really what I think Donald Trump is when it comes to his approach to the press. But the other side of that is Laura doesn't know Donald Trump. Laura doesn't know the people around Donald Trump the way the campaign insiders do. She doesn't know all the nuanced positions Trump took during the campaign. And it's hard to come in from the outside and learn all that quickly. Very hard to do. So on the other side, they're insiders. There's Sean Spicer and Jason Miller, the people who have done it and have been with Donald Trump through thick and thin throughout the campaign. There'll be a much more conventional type of press secretary with a traditional relationship with the press. So it's a real test of who Donald Trump is and what he wants to represent him.
What would you suggest?
It's not mine to suggest. This is a personality test. This is part of the mix that Donald Trump has to put together in order to decide who represents him. If he wants combat with the press, it's Laura. If he decides he wants to tone it down because it's just not worth it to him to fight all the time, then I think it's going to be Jason or Sean.
Yeah. You know, the combat approach is interesting, certainly from our perspective, because like you said, it would be must-see TV. I mean, she would certainly hold their feet to the fire. The idea of trying to court the press with someone, you know, who might be more amenable, who might be able to kind of almost play good cop, bad cop. You know, if you had somebody like even Sean Spicer or Jason Miller who could kind of go out and be the good cop to Trump's bad cop in terms of that relationship, there's something to be said for that, isn't there?
Well, there is, and that would be why it's a test of Donald Trump. And certainly that person would have an easier job in some ways than somebody who's just engaging in combat every day. You know, the press can just wear you out over time. It's hard to engage in combat with them every single day of your life. And that's why press secretaries burn out, quite frankly. It's a wonderful job, but it's a tough job in all circumstances. So, you know, good cop, bad cop, you can't court the press. That's the fundamental issue here. The press is ideological. And the press loved Barack Obama because of who Barack Obama was, what he represented, his position on issues. So they were fond of him and that which he represented. There is none of that for Donald Trump. And I'll give you an example. Press always says Barack Obama's presidency, historical. They're not saying that about Donald Trump, despite the fact that he's the first businessman, the first outsider ever elected president. He is historical in that regard. But do they call him that? Of course not. Because that conveys some sense of admiration, liking, and they reserve that for Barack Obama, and also they would have done it for Hillary. Historical because she's a woman. He's not historical by the press's judgments and standards. They don't use that word with him, even though factually, of course, he is.
Real quick, I have 2 seconds. Where would you see somebody like Kellyanne Conway? Where do you think she'd be a great asset?
Well, Kellyanne could have whatever job she wanted pretty much in the White House. But if I read between the lines, what she is saying is she wants to focus on raising her children. It doesn't sound like she wants to take a job inside the White House. So she's going to help guide the transition here and be effective in that regard. But then it wouldn't surprise me if she does not enter the White House and she returns to her private business and conducts herself in that manner.
Yeah, and she certainly after this could do anything. Ari, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate your wisdom today.